Welcome. Today's episode number 2 of 3 for August. And today's session, A Mere Mortals Makes a Dashboard. I'm Bill Emmert. I'm a technical architect here in the MTC in Philadelphia. And today I'm going to be covering a situation that we had with a customer and them having to look at new ways for adding value. And one of the things that they are looking at, this is a car dealership, Contosa Motors, and what they're looking for is ways to add value to their customers. In today's day with the automobile sales, the competition is more closely aligned with each other because of things like true value car offerings to say how much you should be paying for a car and where you can get the car for certain prices. So with that, dealerships are having to look for ways to add value to the customers to make it more attractive for them to come to that dealership or over another dealership. So one way that the customer was looking at how they could add value was to actually provide predictive maintenance on their cars. And what they would do is they would monitor the performance of the car and be able to provide feedback back to the customer on when a item might need to be maintained. For example, brakes. And brakes is not an easy thing to detect because right now the way they typically do it is they say, well, you know, have your brakes checked every 10,000 miles or every 20,000 miles, right? But every driver is different. And it's not only age that impacts the driver, but it's also, there are other things that play into it. So we created a predictive model over the data that they had that would allow us to understand and be able to provide feedback to the customers that would give them a good idea as to when they needed to bring their car in for service before the price of the service would actually go up because they waited too long and the damage was then done. And the advantage to the dealership is actually twofold. One is to get a better understanding as to the types of drivers that they have and the types of drivers they service, but also when they can do predictive maintenance, they can also have parts at the right place at the right time. And what that means is many times you go into a dealership to get your car serviced and they say, yeah, you're going to need this done, and oh, by the way, we have to order that part because we don't have it in stock. If the dealership could actually predict that maintenance needing to be done, they can order the items in prior and having some on hand. Obviously, they can't keep every part for every car that they would need to service because they don't have the warehouse space. So being able to predict that maintenance would really help them and actually make you as a customer a more satisfied customer. So that being said, one of the things that we did was we developed reports for the customer, reports for the dealership to be able to monitor their customers. Now, obviously, there's some things that have to go into this, such as being able to get the data off the cars and actually back to them to be able to report. So one of the things that we started looking at was building dashboards that had real-time information and more static information. Real-time information being the driving habits, the braking, the temperature on the brakes, the temperature of the car, and things like that. So allow us to be able to predict the maintenance that's going to be required after a certain period of time and the certain impact triggers that would show on why a car might need to be maintained. And then from the other side is they were also looking for being able to track customers who have been given recalls, for example, and having them gotten them completed. And also being able to say whether the recall hardware was actually in stock or not, so that way they can actually make the appointments with the customers ahead of time, so that way they don't have to wait for the customer. Again, being more service oriented and being able to reach out. So how do we do this? We created 2 sets of reports. We're leveraging Power BI for this solution. And what we did was we created two sets of reports that had real-time streaming information, which as the data came in, it actually was analyzed, went through machine learning, and we came out with predictive maintenance on certain cars. The other one was reports, more static, that can be refreshed not on a real-time basis, but more on a scheduled basis. Maybe every several hours, a couple times a day, or even every day, once a day or once a week, depending on what the the needs are. And what we did was we created these two sets of reports. Right? In this one that we're looking at, this is the real live data, so you can see from the top, it says Vehicle Telemetry Analytics Real-Time Reports. Right? So as we look at this information, this data is actually live, coming in from the streaming vehicles. Oh, I've just been handed the note. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. If you have questions, please send them in the chat window, and we'll have somebody ask any questions if you have any. So as we stream and capture this information, it goes through our Azure portal and goes up through Cortana Insights, and then a output is sent out to SQL Server in Azure, and that's where we're driving these reports from. And not expecting customers, our dealer, to have to be able to create these. They wanted to know, how can they have access to just the right information they need to see for each person? So one person may be in services and they want to take a look at the recalls and that information in a dashboard. But somebody who's more in the line of managing the services, wanting to be able to be more predictive in understanding the equipment, the parts that they need to order, and also being able to reach out and alert customers when service is going to be needed based on the feedback that the car is giving to us. We provided these dashboards, and as I look at this, and we take a look at the data actually changing on the slide, and you can see as the data comes in, the slide is changing. So that's a real-time report. If I look at the other report, we have a recall report, and this is a static report. They go in here and they take a look at this information, and they can drill into specific vehicles of different types to see what they want to know. They can look at data by location or area. So it allows them to actually be more proactive in understanding, where the services or where the recall is, needs to be handled. By doing this, it allows them to actually reach out to the customer and say, we noticed that you haven't had your recall done yet. As you can see here, the number of cars that have actually come through this dealership that have some type of recall has a count of 713. Well, one of the things that the customer asked was, well, how many of those cars have we already completed the recall on? So we easily went in and we said, let's edit this report. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on a space here where I want this new figure to be added. And I'm coming to the recall space. And under the data, I'm going to say click on recall completed. Now, this allows me to actually take this information, and we're going to drag this up into the values area. And we can see as we want to eliminate this, I'm going to remove all of it except for the recall. And here's a list of all the columns, all the data as to it being recalled, how many different days we actually recalled and services those cars. In reality, this is not a good spot for this, so we're actually going to remove it, and we'll end up creating a new report for this. But in doing so, I now have the data that I actually want to take a look at, and I want to provide the capability to the dealer, the individuals in the dealership, to build their own dashboard. Now I'm going to act as I'm one of the dealer people, and so I'm one of the mere mortals now. And how would I go about leveraging the capability of being able to say, I don't need to see all of this, but I might want to see this value. If you notice, when I hover over the value of 713, I can actually pin, and it's going to prompt me on where I want to put it. I can put it either in an existing dashboard, or I'm going to actually create a new dashboard because I don't have a dashboard for this. So I'm going to create one for Contoso Motors, and in this case it would be for myself. I'd have this dashboard as mine, and now I can actually go over and take a look at what the dashboards are that I have, and I refresh down to take a look at where Contoso Motors might be. Let me refresh this. And as we do this, any new dashboards that I might have created, for example, here's the new dashboard, it pops up into the dashboards that I have allocated or made available to me. Now, because I have two different sets of reports, as I said, I have the real-time telemetry that's coming in. There are 3 different reports here. If I look at each one, right, there's several different visualizations on each report. And I also have the static data that gets updated on a nightly basis. And this also has 3 separate reports. If I wanted to combine this together into one view, what I can do now is go through and choose the different visuals that I wanted to post onto that one dashboard. It doesn't matter that they're coming from 2 separate sets of reports. Matter of fact, if I had 7 different sets of reports, each one coming from a different data set, I could actually post all of them onto the dashboard so that I have one clean view of all the data that I need to see when I first come in the morning. This makes it very accessible for me to focus on just the information that's appropriate for me. So as I go through, I'm going to post this one and say I want to use the existing one, choose the one that I want, Contoso Motors, and I pin it. Now if I go back here, that one I just posted or pinned is now here. I can move it around and say I want that piece to come here. I can also shift this over, and as you can see, I can create the layout and also change the size of items based on what would be most appropriate for me. So for example, if I want this to only be this size, and I'm going to put it up here so I can get more information onto my dashboard, I can do that. If I really want this to be big, I could actually create it bigger, right? And as you can see, I can continue. In this case, these are both coming in from the static data. I want to now post something that's coming from the real-time data. So I'm going to use, again, an existing. I'm going to choose my Contoso. In this case, I'm not going to put it on the Contoso. I'm going to put it on one that's already existing. And as I pull these together, I actually can now create multiple different dashboards and have combining data so that way I get visualization in one spot for what I need to look at. Let's take a look at a couple of these dashboards. So we've already looked at this one. If I come back in here, I take a look at various different dashboards. I have all of these dashboards that I have access to. So I can take a look, for example, the one that I just pinned. I'll look at this real-time analytics dashboard. So as the data changes, so shall this dashboard. Now, the difference between a dashboard and a report is a dashboard is providing me one view of all the information I need to see at a single glance. But if I need to drill down and understand a little more information about what that little visualization is showing me, I can actually click on it, and it takes me over to the report in which that visualization actually exists. And now I can start to deal with that visualization right here. And for example, I might want to take a look at those cars of a certain type, and I can filter out the rest of the charts on this report just by interacting with any one of the items on this chart. For example, if I wanted to take a look at just Redmond and cars that have an average speed, right? I can also go in here and take a look at only Redmond where their maintenance has a probability or there's a recall, right? So I can filter out to take a look at what's going on. And again, right from here, I don't have to go back to my dashboard for a case. I could actually start to come in here and start to look at other information that allows me to visualize what's going on. And what we're looking at here in this case is information about, for example, vehicles requiring maintenance by model. So we've broken down the models to sedans, hybrids, family, station wagons, and so forth. You can see that the sedan seems to be requiring more maintenance. Now, what that might be a false leading to think that, oh, sedans are a worse car than other cars. That's not true. There could be more sedans on the road than the other types. So I might need to take a little further look at the information. So it may be looking at the vehicles in operation, and right, I'll be able to take a look at the different types in a certain location. For example, I'm looking at hybrid here. Hovering over, there's 3,001 hybrids in Bellevue, Washington alone. If I take a look at Redmond, that count is smaller for hybrids. Actually, in Redmond altogether, there are a smaller number of cars that we've serviced than we have for Bellevue. And it does give me the capability of getting a good understanding as to what's going on with the reports and the data. And being able to then take this information and reach out to customers to say, hey, we know that your vehicle needs maintenance. Would you like to schedule it, right? Being proactive and then instead of reactive. Customers would appreciate that than having to forget and continue to forget to make that service call. And then all of a sudden they realize that they got to make it because now the light's coming on in the car that says service engine soon, right? And we all know that that red light, you can always stick a sticky note over the front of your dashboard to get rid of that light, but it's still there. We know. So as you can see, creating dashboards off of different reports is very simple. I can actually create multiple dashboards. I can actually have one dashboard that's really long, and if I come back to take a look at my dashboards, I'm going to go back down to the one on the real-time telemetry. And as you can see here, from the screen, I have a lot of space that's used up, but I have more information on this dashboard, so I can just scroll down, or I can actually just reduce the size of my screen, which may be an appropriate thing to do, but at the same time, I'm now having to squint to take a look at what the data is really there. So in reality, it may work one way or another. We also have the capability of taking this information and actually posting it out as a report. So the reports can actually post it out as anonymous access. So you can provide the salespeople actually a website that they can go to, and they can actually see this information, interact with this information as an anonymous person. So in that case, you wouldn't want to actually have any private information. So, and if you take a look at what we've done with the report, if we take a look at the health statistics, right, we don't actually have any information about who the owner is the report. The only thing we have in this report, for example, on this page, I'm looking at the VIN number of the car. if I wanted to, I could actually take that VIN number and actually then go out and find out who the owner of the report is, or access the report from internally and be able to get the details on who owns that car. But if you're going to post something out anonymously, you're not going to want to post out information that anybody on the network, internet, can actually take a look and find out who owns what car. Right? It just not, I guess it's a not good policy, right? So that's dashboarding. Dashboarding, again, remember, is different than reports. The reports actually have the more detail in it than a dashboard. A dashboard is a immediate look. So when I start up my Power BI, right, what you're going to see is it comes into a dashboard. This is a dashboard that I have identified as being important for me. These pieces of information have to do with my work. So I want to make sure that that information is right in front of me when I come into this every day to take a look at what's going on. I can take a look at how many, the influenced revenue. I can take a look at the amount of attendees that have come through sessions, what the average rating of a customer coming through our center. So it's the same thing. I can actually get all of this information around the dealership and provide this easily to the end user, to the salespeople, to the service people, to even the person who is the receptionist, to say, you know, hi, can I get your name? And from there, I can pull up information about them and immediately get them off to the right place without having to actually wait for them to tell what they're calling for, right? We know that you've gotten an indication that your car needs maintenance, right? So would you like us to send you over to service, right? It gives you the capability to be actually more forthcoming to the customer and providing them an added value that they would find worthy of going to your dealership over somebody else who has a competitive, the same competitive pricing that they're offering, right? So with that, I want to just quickly go in, and since we're in the process of doing this, right, one of the things that the customer has asked us for is the capability to go in and modify a report or two. Now, in that case, right, we have the capability of building the reports here in the web browser, right? Or in reality, most customers are going to want to build or make changes in a test and development environment and then push those changes up to the browser, right? Up to the portal. So in that case, I would actually use the Power BI desktop. And in this case, I'm going to open up the Power BI desktop to show here is the development environment for the standalone static environment, right? And as you can see here, the customer wanted me to add how many cars were actually completed in recalls. So I added that. The other thing they wanted to do is say, okay, here's the number of cars by type that have had recalls. How about we also indicate how many of those cars in each of those categories have already been completed? And that can be easily modified by changing the type of visualization from a regular column chart to a line column chart. And now, by going in and specifying I want to add the recall completed as the line value here, you'll notice that it's now added that line into that chart, and at the same time it's automatically overlaid and put the data points on there. I really don't want the data points there. I mean, it's kind of confusing. It doesn't look as clean. So I'm going to go in here and I'm actually going to take off the data labels. And as you can see, it's now a cleaner version of the report. I can now save this and keeping the development environment. And now when I'm satisfied with this and I could publish this out, for example, to a workspace that is shared by the Q&A people who might be able to or might want to go through and Q&A this. But because this is simple, I'm going to actually publish it right out and publish it out to my workspace. Now you'll notice when I do and I say I'm going to publish it out to my workspace, you can see there are several other workspaces down here. I actually have one in here for development and test, but I'm going to push this out directly to the production version. I know, bad form, but I'm going to do it anyway. You notice it's actually prompting me and says, hey, there's a data set already out there with this name. Do you want to overwrite it? And I'll say replace it. So now it's going out there and replacing that data set and those reports. So now when I'm actually going to go back in and I'll choose to go into that the vehicle telemetry desktop report, I'll be able to now access that newly changed reports, and I can drag those reports back out onto or add to a dashboard because they're now the way the customer would like to see the information. And with that, I'm going to go back into my dashboard, and if the dashboard items were changed, I might have to replace them depending on the change altogether. If I removed it, I'd actually get an X over the image that was created, or I would actually be able to drag it out and add it to the desktop again. So with that, I'm going to take a step back and find out if there are any questions. Stephen? You had a question earlier that you were talking about when we were talking about what this.
So Kevin was wondering, how would, per the connected car scenario, the dealer have the necessary consent from the owner to acquire the data that will allow the predictive analytics and maintenance?
So that's a great question. Let me just repeat it so that way make sure everybody heard it. The question was, how does the dealership get the consent of the user, the owner of the car, to actually collect that information? Well, that data is not necessarily readily available, right? It requires a device that gets put in underneath the dashboard to provide that information. So it would be only at the consent that that device be put into the car, and at any point the owner can actually tell the dealer or do it themselves. They can take the device out, so they would no longer be streaming that information back. So it is an option that the customer would actually have to choose to do, and it's an added feature that gets put into the car, into the diagnostics area of the vehicle. So as we looked at, and just reviewing what we did, we looked at various different dashboard reports, multiple reports in one report, multiple reports in another report, and I was able to collect that information and post them out to a dashboard. This gives me a dashboard that has just the information that's important to me, and I have immediate access to it and forefront of viewing when I come into that dashboard. Now, the one thing I didn't mention, and I can mark this as a favorite. I can go in and I could take a look at all my dashboards, and as I hover over them, I could say I want this to be a favorite, I want this to be a favorite, I want this one to be a favorite. And now, when I go into my Power BI desktop in the browser, I can actually go to my favorites, and now I have access to the most important dashboards that I want to look at. And from here, I can go in and take a look at that information. Another question.
So we had a follow-on question. What are the PR implications for visualizing data that demonstrates recalls per make and model? What would the car manufacturer's response be to that?
Well, so the car manufacturers actually have to notify the individuals, and I think that we're starting to see, and this definitely was a question that we got from the car manufacturers, from the dealers. We wanted to know, do we have to worry about this? And their response was, more and more car manufacturers are being open, and they're indicating when there are recalls, so that they don't get into a situation where customers don't know about it and individuals are surprised when they find out that there were 30 recalls for a specific car model. So it is a touchy subject. However, this information does not need to be posted. It does not need to be made anonymously available if they didn't want to. If they felt that that information was critical and may cause some feedback or pushback from the manufacturers themselves, they may not post that information anonymously onto the website, and they may just make it internal only for those individuals that have assigned access. So it can be handled anonymously. They may just filter out what they want to make anonymous, such as the cars, the car types that are actually having to have preventative maintenance and things like that. They may not even publish it on the web, right? Again, it's more of an available option that some implementations may take advantage of and not.
Thank you.
No other questions?
That's all for now.
So if you want to learn more about Power BI, you can go out to powerbi.com. There's plenty of videos out there about creating reports, creating dashboards. Or you can also go to your local MTC. There are MTCs around the world. Those Microsoft Technology Centers are willing, and eager to help customers to understand what the capabilities are and how to leverage the features. Power BI is continuously changing. Every month they come out with new features, new additions to enhance, and we're doing it by feedback from customers like you. So if you would like to take a look at Power BI, go out to powerbi.com. It's free to try. It's free to use. And you can actually start playing with it today. And if you're interested in more information, reach out to your local MTC, and we'll be happy to help you. So for that, I'm Bill Emmert. Well, we got one more question, late arrival.
We just snuck one in. Are there any data collaborations that can be between the dealerships and, let's say, insurance companies or other industry partners about shared data that can benefit the customer?
That's that is a touchy subject. As you know, privacy information is a concern to everybody, and one of the pushbacks of a car dealership collecting information about the speed of the car, the temperature of the car, whether you were aggressively driving, may not necessarily, an individual may not want that shared with insurance companies. Now, they could potentially share the information anonymously as an aggregate value and not individual information. So they could say that there are more aggressive drivers in Bellevue than there are in Redmond. But that may also be misleading because this dealership may sell more cars to Bellevue individuals versus to Redmond individuals. So it's a hard thing. There is the opportunity, there could be a benefit, but the customer themselves are probably going to have to be sold on what their benefit is. Obviously, there is a benefit to the insurance company. There's probably a benefit to the auto manufacturers or the dealers. But the individual is probably the one that might put the brakes on something like that.
Thank you.
Again, this is Bill Emmert. Thank you for coming, and I hope that you visit your MTC and try out Power BI today. Thank you.